As I stated in my SPS response plan update, you're really going to hear from almost every member of the superintendent's cabinet as we've divided this up into several sections. We are really hoping that in this slide deck that we have addressed practically every question that you all brought to us as a group at the July 9th meeting, including new questions that may have come from our community members, parents, students, teachers, et cetera. So at this time, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Dr. Rice. Dr. Rice?
Thank you, Dr. Gordon, Madam Chair, Madam Vice Chair, and board members. We're back again to give you some specific details, as Dr. Gordon has alluded to, and hopefully answer all the questions that you all had last month. Differently, however, as he also mentioned, I will bring some of my closest friends with me up here tonight and not stand here alone throughout the presentation. So some folks that are going to cover their areas of expertise, as you see here on what we're going to cover. We're going to look at the Department of Health data and metrics, our fall registration results, the health and safety measures, the staffing, the cleaning and disinfecting procedures, the child care plan, and of course the instructional plan. The first thing we want to talk to you about are some health metrics and data. And the first slide that you see here tonight is basically looking at an overview of the state of Virginia and the number of cases that are currently as of August 3rd. We got this from the Virginia Department of Health, and the reason it's August 3rd is because we want it to be the most recent data prior to when having to submit this presentation for you all. So all you can see is the bottom at the right-hand corner there, you see in the yellow, that's Suffolk. So 1,112 cases as of August 3rd. In conferencing with the local health department, especially in particular Dr. Wagner, we were given some guidance to look at two metrics in particular. And so this slide is looking at those two metrics. Across the two rows, the first row across the top there, you're looking at the number of cases, and that's the number of cases per 100,000. And that's a daily rate that you're looking at there. That second row across the bottom there is looking at the percent of positive cases. The color-coded key in the bottom right-hand corner is very important because that helps you understand this chart. Based on the metrics, anything that is in the red zone there is considered a substantial or high risk or threat to the community. Anything in the orange is considered moderate. Anything in the yellow is considered low. And then, of course, green would mean that you don't have any cases, and that's the ultimate goal here. On the left-hand side, you'll notice that these numbers are representing the city of Suffolk, and on the right-hand side, we're looking at the eastern region. Now, some of you may ask, why are we even looking at the eastern region? And really, there are two reasons for this. One is because we have numerous staff members that live outside of the city of Suffolk, and we also have parents, of course, that work outside of the city of Suffolk. So it's important for us to look at the region as a whole as well as the city of Suffolk. So looking at that first metric, the number of cases per day for every 100,000 in population. The flags that they have developed are anything from 0 to 4 cases on a daily basis per 100,000 is considered a low incident. Between 5 and 10, or I should say 5 and 9, that's considered moderate. And more than 10 cases a day per 100,000 is considered a high or substantial risk. As you can see in that line graph for Suffolk, we are well into the red at 25.7 as of August 3rd, or 26 cases per day. The trend, as you notice on the line graph, is starting to make a slight turn down, and the Virginia Department of Health and the local health department look at trends as far as 7-day periods of time and looking for that slope to continue in that motion. So this is just by a day-to-day basis there. On the right, you notice, of course, across the top that the same is true for the eastern region in general, slightly less at 20.4 cases per day, but again, the trend is well into the red zone, above the 10, with a slightly, the curve moving down like we want to see. On the bottom, the flag is anything above 10% of positive cases. So as you can see in Suffolk, we're at 13.5% as of August 3rd. And if you look at the line graph, unfortunately on August 3rd, it looks like the tick was starting to move in an upward direction. In the eastern region, however, it started to flatten out a little bit, right at 10.2%. So that's moving in the right direction, hopefully, into the yellow. So again, by guidance, we've been told that we probably should not bring students into the building and if we are at that high risk level. And as you can see across the board here, everything is in a red And so therefore, the recommendation has to go 100% online with exception of a small group that we're going to talk about in just a minute. So this is just basically a graphic to kind of show you what we're thinking. When they look at the trend, as I mentioned, it's going to be a 7-day period of time. And so we're talking about, for example, greater than 100 cases a week per 100,000 in population. So as long as we're in the red, that metric stays in the red, we want to look at all online instruction. If we can get the trend into the moderate range or that orange, then we're looking at trying to do that hybrid model that we're going to talk about in just a minute and that we shared at the last meeting. If we can get into the yellow and hopefully to the green, then we want to open our doors to get as close to a normal schedule as possible. Now, as Dr. Gordon has indicated already, we want to recommend to you, and of course it's your decision, but we want to recommend that the first 9 weeks be all virtual based on these metrics. What we will do in turn then is monitor this data very closely, especially about midway through the first 9 weeks. That's when we'll start really conferring with the Department of Health and trying to decide, are we ready to make the move to that hybrid platform for those who want that the second 9 weeks. So again, we're going to be looking at the data very carefully. So the hybrid plan that we shared with you last time, we gave several options to the parents, and the one that we went with is with 4 cohorts. So this means that those parents who selected that hybrid option, part face-to-face, part online, our students will be divided into 4 cohorts, an A, a B, a C, and a D cohort. And what that means is they will attend school 1 day a week. So for example, if your child is in the A cohort, they may be assigned Monday. That would mean Tuesday through Friday, they would be online. If your child is in the B cohort, perhaps they will be assigned on a Tuesday. That would mean Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, they are online. Transportation, of course, is going to be provided for all of those who indicated that they needed it on the fall registration form, and we'll follow the same 3 tiers that we do in a normal school year. Middle school first, high school second, and elementary third. So we'll remain on those same 3 tiers when we get to that hybrid model. The virtual plan, I just want to reemphasize that those folks, the parents that selected this option in fall registration, are going to get that regardless of what action you take tonight on the reopening. If that's the option that they want, they are going to be granted that option. But I wanted to emphasize here, and of course you will hear more from the instructional folks about this, but I wanted to emphasize that this will not look like what we did in the spring with the continuity of learning. The instruction will be provided by Suffolk Public Schools teachers. All the instruction and support will be from our staff. Now we're bringing this up as well because we mentioned last month that we thought if we did a hybrid plan that there were some high-need students that probably need more face-to-face time. But we wanted to specify which students we're talking about. That does not include the inclusion students in special education. Those students in special education who receive their instruction in an inclusion setting or maybe get a pull-out every now and then in a resource room would fall into the cohort category that I just described to you if a hybrid option was what their parents selected. So they would fall into that A, B, C, D cohort that I just mentioned. If their parents selected all virtual, obviously they're going to get that as well. These are the students, however, that we want to see a little more face-to-face time with. These are the program students that we talked about last month, and these are the students that require some intensive supports. These students have an alternative curriculum, and it's very difficult to do that virtual online learning. These students receive their instruction in a special ed classroom, and of course, there's still that option of being all online if that's what the parent wanted, or that if they chose the hybrid, we're recommending that that hybrid model be Monday through Thursday, not the 1 day a week ABCD cohort. We're talking about around 300 students. They're spread out among 17 schools, so that's a very small number in each school. And we already know that only about probably a half of them, maybe slightly more, are interested in coming back to that face-to-face. So again, that would be Monday through Thursday, and transportation will be provided by special ed buses, which is why we're so confident we can get that Monday through Thursday schedule accomplished with these students. Meal delivery. We've decided that what we will do is continue with the same model that we're currently using, and that is delivery on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We provide a lunch and a breakfast. to all the students. And what that means is on Tuesday, they will receive a breakfast and a lunch for Tuesday and Wednesday. And on Thursday delivery, they receive a breakfast and lunch for Thursday, Friday, and Monday. We currently are delivering those with our buses, and we will continue doing that. But the schedule will change slightly, and once we confirm what the schedule will look like, of course, we'll advertise it and get that out to everybody like we have done it to this point. Here are the registration results. After that survey, we wanted to give the option to the parents so that we could start the scheduling process. And so we had 10,686 responses. That represents students. That's a great response number. It's still open. We reopened the link so we could capture the rest of the students, but as of today, we have just under 13,800 students enrolled in Suffolk Public Schools, so this is a really good percentage right here. As you can see, it's a pretty even split. About 51% wanted the face-to-face hybrid model, and 49% want that virtual model. So those, again, virtual model students, those 49% will be guaranteed online instruction. The 51% will be at your discretion whether we open with that hybrid model or all virtual. Those who chose that hybrid model also had a question about whether you would need some transportation from Suffolk Public Schools. And as you can see, 67% of those folks needed Suffolk Public Schools transportation. So that's where we're going to build our bus routes. And the Transportation Department already has this data, and they are working on that information as we speak. All right, screening protocols. We actually have three levels of screening protocols. We're going to use what the CDC refers to as a passive method, and basically that is a recommendation from the CDC. Passive meaning it's sort of like a self-evaluation, if you will. And so this is the protocol we're going to use for any visitors to the building. This poster will be posted on the outside of each school or each department, if you will, and where there's the buzzer to get buzzed into the building is where they must read these questions. So whoever's going to unlock the door for them will communicate with them to please read the poster. They may read the questions to them, but they have to answer all three of those questions. You know, the first being, are you experiencing any of those symptoms? Have you taken medication in the last 72 hours to fight a fever? And have you been in contact with someone who has tested positive? If they answer yes to any of those, of course, we're not going to admit them into the building. And then at the bottom, which I've cut off so this would fit the screen better, there were more information for them to follow. And there's also a QR code there that they can get more information on what they should do next if they answered yes to any of those. No, of course, they would be admitted into the building. The safety monitor, if they are in the building at that point, will then direct them to you know, what's your business, nature of business. They can either go to that safety kiosk or into the main office, but that's as far as they will get in the building. We will not have outside folks in the buildings for any reason. The second one is going to be an acknowledgement for parents. We're putting a responsibility on parents to ensure that they will not send their students to school with any symptoms, or whether it's COVID related or not. We don't want any ill students in the building. So basically, this acknowledgement form will go home with be mailed to all parents, I should say. We'll also make it available online, but we want them to sign off with this agreement that they will not send their students to school with any of these symptoms. They will notify the school if they have tested positive or if someone in the household has tested positive. And I'm not going to read this whole form to you, but basically it's just putting the responsibility on parents to say that you will check your child in the morning to ensure they don't have any of these symptoms or that they haven't been exposed to the virus that they are aware of, and they will not send them to school. The third one is for staff. This is an example of the form they will receive. Each staff member will have this form, and it's to be used on a daily basis through a month, and in each month they get a new form. But it's basically the same type symptom checker. They write down whether they yes or no to these, and this is before they arrive to work or school. We don't want them to get to school and then do the symptom checker, so this is what you do at home. Have you been exposed to the virus? Are you feeling ill? What's your temperature? Please record it and write it down, and then if you were experiencing any of those symptoms. So again, if they answer yes to any of these, we do not want them in the building, and they should report to their supervisor that they experienced whenever it was that they checked off on this sheet. So this is the flow chart for what happens after that screening takes place. At the top block there, you'll see screen for COVID, which is what I just shared with you, those three types of screenings. If their answer is with no to everything, then there are no flags or symptoms or whatever, then obviously it goes to the green block, which means you can go to school or work. If they had close contact, whether they have symptoms or not, you move down, cannot go to school or report to work. And then from there you look, exposure, no symptoms, they need to stay home and self-isolate for 14 days. Again, CDC guidelines. If they have lab-confirmed diagnosis, whether they have symptoms or not, they cannot go to school or work. And if you look down below, they stay home for 10 days from the date of that positive test. Again, a CDC guideline. If they had one of the symptoms that was listed on the symptom checker, then they cannot go to school or work, and they must stay home 10 days, and within that 10 days, show no fever for 24 hours without the help of medication, and show 3 days of improvement in whatever symptom they were experiencing. This is the flow chart for what happens if we have a positive case. In the upper left-hand corner, we hope that the nurse is the person who is notified. Once she is notified about a positive case, she is to collect as much information as possible about the situation. She will then report to the building administrator, and she will also report to Ms. Williford, our nursing supervisor. Ms. Williford will then report to myself and also the Suffolk Department of Health. The health department then is going to take all that information and then help us give us guidance on what our next steps should be as far as any closures, trying to determine the contact tracing, how extensive was it, et cetera. I will, of course, then keep Dr. Gordon abreast of everything that's going on so we know what kind of changes or what kind of communication needs to move forward. The building administrator, once he or she is notified, if it was a staff member who tested positive, then they need to notify Dr. Brown in Human Resources. They also need to notify the facilities folks so that we can get cleaning and disinfecting taking place right away. What you see across the bottom in the blue squares down there are basically just additional tasks, responsibilities for these folks. Those are all the things that the school nurse is responsible for, the HR department, Ms. Williford, the health department. These are the expectations we have from them. And then, of course, the responsibilities from my office and the community engagement office so that we can make sure that communication is very specific and happens quickly. These are just some examples of the signage that are going to be throughout the schools and the buildings. The one on the left will be plastered everywhere, and it's just a constant reminder that we're going to follow the 3 W's, wear a face covering constantly, walk or wait 6 feet apart, and you're washing your hands all the time. The one-way signs are going to be posted in the hallways to represent the one-way traffic throughout a building. We do not want any two-way traffic. Again, this is just another way for mitigation and keeping that physical distancing. The round sign over there is actually a sticker, and that's going to be placed on the floors throughout the buildings, in the hallways, cafeterias, the lobbies, the bus ramps. And that's basically a safe place to stand because they're going to be measured off 6 feet apart. Others examples show that we are going to have some of them that are going to be personalized for the schools. So, for example, Nansemond River, it's a reminder to the Warriors to stand 6 feet apart. The face covering reminder. And then the washing the hands will not just be posted at bathrooms, I can tell you. It will be all over the building. We will also have hand sanitizing stations throughout the buildings as well. And one thing I will say about the masks, there have been some questions about, it seems like a long time to have to wear a mask. I know when Dr. Gordon and I met with the student advisory, that was one of the questions they had. And we let them know that when you're in the classroom and you're seated at your place and everyone's in their seats 6 feet apart, you can obviously take a break from that mask. But once you have to get up and move around or anyone's moving around, then the masks need to go back in place. So there will be times to get a break if the students have questions about that. Transportation. Last month when I was here, I shared with you that the CDC guideline was that we had 1 student per seat every other seat, which gave us a capacity of about 12 students per bus. In July, they've changed that so that the guidance is now we can put 1 per seat with the 3 feet distancing. And so this is a diagram of what that would look like. The red dots represent the students, and it's in a zigzag pattern so that we're trying to get as much distance between them as possible, but that also increases our capacity on the buses to around 23 or 24 students. The caveat here, though, is that they all must wear face coverings. So parents that want their children to ride the school buses must understand that they have to wear face coverings. And this is just a picture of one of our buses, an actual bus view from the front to the back, giving you an idea of what it will look like. The white signs, of course, are going to be a little more permanent than just taped pieces of paper, but that was just to give you a visual of what it will look like. This is a diagram of the classroom arrangements. I mean, obviously, we have different size classrooms throughout the division, but this gives you an idea of what we talked about last month, which is 6 feet distancing from center to center of each desk, front, back, and all the way around is the diameter, all facing the front of the room. And here's an example of what that will look like in 2 of our actual classrooms. The classroom on the left is Colonel Fred Cherry Middle School. And I kind of wanted to show this picture because these are the new desks that many of the schools had purchased last year. These are great for collaboration and putting the desks together for group work, but obviously that's not going to happen anytime soon. But we can also space them out that 6 feet apart, as you can see in the picture. The picture on the left is Nansemond River High School, and that's what typical high school desks are looking like in our division. And so we can get about 10 to 12 desks in a classroom properly spaced. And that's just a visual of what it looks like. So at this point, I'm going to